Ay, Michtam le David Shamreiniel Ki chasi sivach Amart ladinoi adinoi ato Toivasi balolecha Likdoishim Asher baret heima Badirei kol chefzivam Yibu atzvaisam Acher maru Walas sichas nizkehem adal Walas ashmaisamal Safarsai Adonai manas chelki vechaisi ato toi mich goyroli chavolim nafluli banehimim Afnachos shafrolai Havarechas Adonai Asher Yitzani Afleilois Yisri Nichil Yoisai Shavisi Adonai Lenegdi Samid Ki Mimini Yibal Moit Uchein somach libi vayogel kivoidi af besori yishkoid lo vetach ki loy sa'az zoif nafshi leshoil loy sitein chasid chal lirois shochas Todi heini arachayim soivas machois es penechon imais beminchon etzach. It's a minig by Suda Silula, by Yartzeit Suda. It's a customary at a feast where we celebrate the anniversary of the passing of a saint to recite this psalm that we just sang, Psalm 16. And in verse 10, Psalm 16, verse 10, it says the words we just read, because you have not abandoned my soul to the grave, and you will not allow your saints to see perdition. And in verse 11, let me know the ways of life, the fullness of joy, which is in your face, in your presence, the sweetness that's at your right hand forever. In the inyan of the tzaddikim, and of celebrating tzaddikim, and of having devotions and venerations of our tzaddikim, particularly this one, who I have a tremendous chus that I'm an anical from this tzaddik. I have this merit that he's one of my ancestors, the holy tzaddik, the Chavos Yair. So chus yigalaino. And it's also the Yartzeit of Avram Avinu, according to some opinions. It's not only Avram Avinu, is of course our father. It's also my shver, because my wife's a daughter of Avram Avinu. But the concept that we have here of attaching to these, really, they're certainly Avram Avinu is an embodiment of an archetype of chesed. We said we're remembering the inyan, like the Tanya brings, that the tzaddikim, like the Gemara says, tzaddikim b'misosin kriyim chayim, that the saints, even if they've left this world, they're still called alive. And so we have a prohibition in the Torah of Dora Shalom Mesim. We're prohibited to practice necromancy, to go after the dead. But these people are not dead, they are alive. The Bible tells us here in the Psalms, in Psalm 16, that you do not abandon my soul to the grave, and you do not allow your saints to see perdition. Rather, you let me know the ways of life. And so this particular tzaddik, whose name is Chaim, Yair Chaim, he was by his bris, he was given the name Chaim. At a certain point in his life, he was ill, so they gave him a name Yair Chaim when he was a child. It's a very interesting type of tzaddik because he was one who embodied and embraced the fullness of life. He was someone who appreciated, of course, Torah. The Chavos was Kulei Torah. But also he appreciated minhagim. He appreciated other devotions, saying Tehillim, reading the Zohar Chodesh in a devotional manner, and Zmiras and Shiras v'Sishbachos. It's very famous that in the back of the Sefer Chavos Yor, the last tshuva in the Sefer Chavos Yor, the Shalos Tshuvas Chavos Yor, discusses the whole inyan of reciting Yartzeit. And he says, once we're already discussing the inyan of Yartzeit, it's kedai to be oisik in inyan of shiras v'sishbochas. And so in the Sefer Chavos Yor, you have many pages of shiras v'sishbochas and techinas, songs and hymns, prayers, personal prayers, some that were his own, some that were his father's, some that were his grandfather's. The other thing that's fantastic about the Chavos Yor, particularly now, it's the 6th night of Hanukkah, and that his Yartzeit was this Rosh Chodesh Teves, the first day of Teves, which could fall on the 6th or the 7th night of Hanukkah. Depending if Kislev is a Malay or Choser. This year's Choser, but now we're already in Teves. And so Aleph Teves, Rosh Chodesh Teves, it's a phenomenal day. Because like we said, it's the Yartzeit of Avram Avinu. And so the Neshama of the Chavos Yor was very clearly connected to the Neshama of Avram Avinu. But also the Chavos Yor is Chasigalenu, the Heilige Zayde, his neshama was connected very much to the Yontiv of Hanukkah. And so we see he himself composed extra charuzos, extra verses to Ma'od Tzor. And he also wrote about this. So the Sefer Mekor Chaim, which remained in a manuscript until the 1980s. Can you imagine? The Zayd of the Chavos Yor, he passed away was 1602, 1603, something like that. No, I'm sorry, 1703. And so he wrote this in the 1600s, passed away in the early 1700s. And until the 1980s, the Sefer was not published. And Baruch Hashem, we zoichet to live in the generation when the Sefer was published, and it's been republished, and here it is. Mekor Chaim on Shulchan Aruch. It's 2 volumes printed by Mechon Yerushalayim. It's kedai to talk about this. He talks a lot about Hanukkah, and like he says, he brings here 4 extra stanzas to Ma'od Tzor. So meaning the Mautzur, the original Mautzur, we know would end. There's the name of the Mechaber of Mautzur. His name was Mordechai. So Mautzur, the first Charuz is Mautzur, Mem, and then the second Charuz, the second verse is Rosh Savanafshi, is Reish, and then Vir Kodshe is Dalid, and Krois Koimas is Chav, and Yavanim Nikvatzulai is Yid. And that's usually where it would seem the original Mechaber of the Mautzur, he ended Mautzur there with those 5 verses. So then the Chavos Yor brings here, he says, Minaga Oilam Shemaisifan Achar Mautzur Charuzazai. So this we know, although he has a different nusach than we have, and there are different nuschos for Chesef Zorei Kodshecha. So he brings the minig, the custom, the common popular custom is to add an extra verse to Mautzur. So and again, it's a little bit different than the nusach we have. We know Chesef Zorei Kodshecha, meaning reveal thy holy arm, Vikarev Kates HaYeshua, and bring close the end times of the salvation. Nikoim Nikmas Nafshi. So usually it says Nikoim Nikmas Dam Avadecha. You should take revenge for the revenge of the soul of the blood of your servant. But here it says Nikoim Nikmas Nafshi. Take revenge for my soul, miad malchus harasha, from the evil kingdom. Ki archa li hasha. Now, generally the nusach that we have is lashon rabim. It's in the first person plural. Us lanu, but here, and we're going to explain, it's in the first person. Ki archa li hasha. The truth is that this is actually a polemic against that, Mark. The hour has been very long for me. Ve'ein kates l'zayis hara'a, and there's no end to this evil. So usually the nusach we have is ve'ein kates l'mei hara'a, and there's no end to the days of evil. Then it says V'tzel Salmoin Tirdoif Admoin. Again, it's different. There are different nuschos of how that ends. But here it says in the shadow of shadows, pursue the red one, Esau, Edom, V'savi Royim Shiva, and bring the 7 shepherds. Which again, it's a little bid different than what we have. It says the nusach we usually have is ki archa lanu yeshuv ein kates l'mei hara the chayad mine b'tzel salmine. So all right, it's the same idea, but the hokim lanu shiva, and here it says the savi roim shiva. And again, the difference between this nusach and the nusach we usually have is the nusach we usually have is in the singular form. I mean, is in the plural form, and this in the singular form. We're going to explain this in a minute. So then it says, so but most people know that the 6th verse to the hymn Mautzur. But then what about, there's a 7th verse, which I know some Hasidim sing. I know particularly in Nadverna, it's a minhag to have this charuz added. It's also a little different, and it's from the Ramah, and it's like this: meaning you were always my salvation, my glory, and the one who picks up my head. Please listen to the voice of my cries, my King, my holy God. Haver chatoayu pershorai gam begolus haravi. Remove my sins and iniquities even in this 4th exile, although there are other versions that say the 3rd exile. Chazek Yisrael v'sachnia Yishmael u'me'adaim tifta nafshi. Strengthen the Israelites and weaken the Ishmaelites, and from the Edomites redeem my soul. So that's from the Ramah. The Ramah, of course, Ramosha Israel is who wrote the Ashkenazic glasses to the Shulchan Aruch. So then he brings Rav of Bezdin Marina Rabbi Yirmiyah Hosef Kachel Shmoi. So then the Chavos Yair brings another verse to the Maoz Tzur from a certain chief rabbi of a town, Rabbi Yirmiyah, Rabbi Jeremiah. I'm not sure who this is. If anyone knows who is this, apparently a contemporary of the Chavos Yair was Rabbi Jeremiah, Rabbi Yirmiyah. I'm not sure who it is, but it goes like this. Yehi Ratzain milfanecha Yachid hoid vehadar. May be thy will, the unique and only, one and only, true glory and beauty. Gual she'eris tzonecha me'edom Yishmael ve'kedar. Redeem the remnant of thy flock from Edom, Ishmael, and Kedar. Various biblical nations, right? Rachum b'kodesh nedar. He who is merciful in holiness and glorified. Revach tosim laidar. Please place expanse to thy flock, not to the the pen of the flock. Save thy inheritance, O God of vengeance, arise against Amalek from generation to generation. So then that's from Rabbi Yirmiyah. Again, I'm not sure who this Rabbi Yirmiyah is. And then he brings like this, V'zu mishali. He said, this is mine. This is from me. So he goes like this. Choiker levekerev reina v'yonyenu. The one who searches out the heart and the innermost essence. Please look upon our poverty, which also means the spiritual poverty. Yoitzer voiker v'erev habito b'shifluseinu. The former of morning and evening, please cast a gaze upon our lowliness. This is very beautiful. Yehi kates legaloseinu b'nei beis mikdasheinu. May there be an end to our exile and build our holy temple. Magera deresi ir hagayveres vetishkoin bekirbeinu. Remove the cloak of the overpowering goat, which is representative of Esau, and dwell within our midst. Maher v'hoyil shalach Mashiach tzidkenu. Hurry up and awaken and send the true Messiah. So then he says like this. So he says, I showed this that I composed to Zayd al-Chavos Yair, and the Baal says, to Oisel Echad min Gedolim. I showed this to one of the Gedolim, to one of the great rabbis of the generation. This, my composition, an extra verse to Maoz Tzur, which I love these words, they're beautiful. But I didn't like he didn't like the way that the letters were poetically it didn't work. So he said there was a problem with the rhyming and the poetic style, but also this Gadol, one of the Gadolim, told the Zayd of the Chavos Yair that the whole rest of Maoz Tzur is in the singular tense, not in the plural, right? Which is interesting because, like we said, the Seif Surah Kodesh, usually the nusach we have is in the plural, in first person plural, not in the first person singular. But he's pointing out that even we see this nusach that he has is in the singular. So the Chavos Yair said when he showed this to this gadol, he said, "All right, I shook my head in agreement with him. I nodded in agreement, nodded my head, and I said, this is how it should be." So then he changes like this: Choiker levekerev avi malki v'koini. Again, it starts the one who seeks out the heart and the innermost essence. My father, my king, and my maker or owner. The one who forms morning and evening, please look at my poverty. Yadcha huram al moini, harishain huad moini. May your hand be lifted up against the one who is abundantly my opponent, the first red one, meaning Esau. Again, remove the cloak of that overpowering goat. Again, Esau. Nachash hakad moini. The original snake, the original serpent, meaning the recognition is that Esau was an embodiment of the again what we could call a Jungian archetype of the original serpent in the Garden of Eden. However, he gives a different nusach. He said, "Oy va'az yigdal sasoni," meaning that magera deres ira geveres, and then it says va'az yigdal sasoni, and then my joy will be aggrandized. While asayim b'davar tov. To end with a good note. So that's so he talks quite a bit about the Indian of the of Hanukkah and the Ner Hanukkah, and this is in the Makor Chaim, which is not available for free online, but the Chavos Yair is available for free online in Sefaria, and there you have the whole long version of the Zemer, which the Chavos Yair's grandfather wrote. Who was a great polemicist. Also, he unfortunately Hashem Yimkum Dama, he was murdered at the young age of 41 years old. But he accomplished a lot in a short life and wrote a lot of svarim and so forth. Unfortunately, we don't have too many of them left. But this we have is his Zemer on the for Hanukkah, which I don't know. It's a little bit long. I don't think might not be time now to present it, but it's in the Sefer Chavos Yair. But anyway, and I kind of want to keep this short. I don't want to be up so late. So just interesting, just little things that the Zayda Chavos Yair brings about Hanukkah. There's a very famous tshuva about Spielen Kvitlach, about playing cards on Hanukkah. That's brought in the Chavos Yair, a very famous tshuva. We learned that earlier today. He says very interesting things about the whole Indian of minhagim and so forth, and how minhagim are not based as much on ancestry as they are based on geography. Very interesting things. Um, but that's neither here nor there. But I want to read this in the Hilchas Hanukkah what the Seder Chavos Yor brings. It says, nearly, it seems to me, the Iker mitzvah, Hushiyah hamadlik etzel neres chatzi shalarois oisam l'smayach behem. It says that the main mitzvah of it's interesting. It doesn't even say the main mitzvah of Ner Hanukkah, but the main mitzvah. So if we really wanted to be medayik in what the Zayda Chavos Yor is saying, is it like it cannot if we want to like take it in like a Hasidic way, but also to be like medayik, like we would with a Rishon, because obviously these are things that this is the Kitzur Halachas. These are things that he never published, so it's not really edited. So we could assume, obviously, the simple meaning when he's saying Iker Mitzvah means the Iker Mitzvah Ner Chanukah, right? But it's a fascinating thing that he says the Iker Mitzvah, and that's how it's printed, that's how it's published, is that this is the main mitzvah, not just the main mitzvah of Ner Chanukah. It's like the main mitzvah klolis. This is what embodies Judaism. This is what keeps us alive. What is it? That the one who lights. All right, let's before we make a Hasidic Torah out of it, let's just look simply what it says. Is it to be that you should be next to the candles, the lights, the lamps, the menorah for a half hour to see them, to rejoice with them. It doesn't say and to rejoice with them, but seeing them is rejoicing with them. To see them, to rejoice with them. Kem gam kein zeicher l'simcha shahayu madlikin acher anes. Because what happened with the Nes Hanukkah, right? It's not just that they were madlik the menorah, not just that they lit the menorah, right? But there was a simcha that took place by the hadlakas of menorah. When in the Beis Hamikdash, after all of the milchama and everything that happened, and all of the desecration that happened, it wasn't just, all right, until now we couldn't do the mitzvah, and now we could do the mitzvah, right? But rather, there was a simcha there. There was a joy, there was rejoicing that they found that pach shemen. They found the cruse of oil. So it was a time of simcha. That meaning there was a simcha that was after the nes, that they were madlikin acher nes. And that's what it means when it says vadlikun neres b'chatzvus katshecha. What does it mean that they lit candles in your holy courtyards? What does it mean b'chatzvus katshecha? The menorah was not in the chotzer of the Beis Hamikdash, was in the heichel, right? The menorah was inside. So why does it say that they kindled lights in your holy courtyards? It should have said they kindled lights in the heichel, beheichel kodshecha. What is this bechatzvus kodshecha? The menorah was in the Beis Hamikdash, not in the chotzer around the Beis Hamikdash. It was in the heichel, was in the temple itself, indoors in the building. So it says Shanir Elisha Loira Tzalema had Lokas Menar B'derech Neis. So he's saying because we're not, when we say in Alanissim, Vadliku neres b'chatzvus kodshecha, right? And we kindle the candles in your holy courtyards. That's not talking about the hadloka of the menorah, which was miraculous. We know that the miracle happened, with the lighting of the menorah. But when in our liturgy, we don't mention the miracle. In the liturgy, in the Alanissim, we're just saying that they lit candles in your holy courtyards, right? Because she'im kena ikar chaser min hasipur b'Alanissim. Because if the Alanissim is talking about the menorah that lasted 8 days when there's only enough for one day, in the liturgical form that we have Alanissim, we're missing the main point of the story. That's the kasha everybody has. Why isn't it? Why is there no mention of this in Alanissim? So v'hachi mashma ein lanu rishus l'shtamish behem el roisim bilvad. So meaning that it's not just that they had the Neiris v'hadlika neiris v'chatzvus kodshecha means that they were misak in the mitzvah of Ner Hanukkah, not just the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash, but there was more ner, there was more lights, and so it seems like when we say in the Haneres Halolu ve'ein lanu reshus l'shtamish behem el l'roisam, we say l'roisam bilvad, we don't have any permission to use these lights, right? Meaning Shabbos, we light Shabbos candles, so we should have light, right? Whereas we light the Hanukkah candles not to have light, to use to see, but specifically for Pesumei Nisa, to publicize the miracle. So it must have been, right, that when they lit the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash, with the pure oil that lasted for 8 days, they must have lit other lights in the Chatzos Katshecha, in the courtyard, to publicize the miracles, because not everyone could go inside the temple to see the menorah, but there were more lights that were lit all around, that these lights were there for Pesumei Nisa. When it comes to these lights, still, we don't have any permission to use these lights, just to look at them, right? And the halacha is, when you just see the lights of the menorah, you could say the bracha Shasanisim in the first night Shechianu, even if you're not lighting your own Ner Hanukkah, right? And I remember my Rebbe in high school, Moshe Weinberger, is a very famous, popular rabbi in Long Island today, in Woodmere, New York. So Rabbi Weinberger, he would always say that that people are in such a they're not invested in the mitzvah of Ner Hanukkah the way it's supposed to be, So like the way he said it is, they're just in a rush. You're going to light the candles and go out and go have a party or something. And he said, the tzaddikim, when they would make the Ner Hanukkah, the story of the old Baba Verav Ben Zion, Hashem Yim Kam Damai, the Kedushas Tzion. He sat and he took the cotton and he was rolling and dipped in oil, and he was rolling the wicks, and he was crying, and his granddaughter came, Zayda, was Weintman. Maybe it was from Shlomo, the first from Shlomo. Zayda was Weintman. Zayda, why are you crying, grandfather? Why are you crying? He said, I'm crying that you and your children, your grandchildren should all be Erlich Yidden. And his prayers came true, because that little girl, she was the matriarch of the Twerskis from Milwaukee, which we all know and love. Reb Mechel and Reb Avram and Reb Aaron, all the and then Reb Shlomo Zechron Livracha, all the holy Rebbes from Hornersteipel in America, that it was Titoff as I feel for Yiddishkeit, and are such a great example for all of us. Is there Einiklach from that? That's where they come from. It was those tears that made it that they should able to be to halten sich stark ehrliche Hasidische Yidden in America, and to go to law school and go to medical school, and to blaben sich ehrliche Rebbe'shich Yidden. That was because of Baba Rebbe's tears, And he said that's the old way of the tzaddikim. It's not just a Hasidic thing. We see this from the Chavos was from before the Baal Shem Tov's time. And Rabbi Weinberger said, next year, he showed how, he talked about how they invented the things, about 20 years ago, where they already had the oil already filled the oil already filled, right? And I understand for an old person or something, that it's someone who's not well, it's a good thing, or they have the congealed olive oil or whatever it is, right? And he said, next year it's not enough that they. Hold on. This was a phone. Hold on. I'll be right back. What's it geschenkt, though? I don't know where that mezuzah went. Anybody know where the mezuzah went? I have to look again. Is that over there? Hold on. Hold on, I'll be right back. Is it over here? Here it is. Oh, Baruch Hashem. I'm sorry. I noticed the mezuzah fell, but I found it. I put it back up. I'm sorry about that. So anyway, I put the mezuzah back up. Baruch Hashem. So anyway, the Rabbi Weinberger, he said, people, there's such a rush to make Ner Hanukkah just a light, say a bracha, and a life devek, and we go back to whatever we're doing. He said, he said next year in the box with the candles, there's going to come a little man. He lights the candles for you. You don't have to do anything, right? And we thought, it's a Hasidic thing, right? We see the Chavos Yor was before the Baal Shem Tov's time, and he recognized the importance that you have to sit next to the Ner Hanukkah, and you have to sit there and look at it. And then he says, "Liknois shava v'hu yasim ner Hanukkah mitzvah namufkar v'leiknois ner shava mishuchim kvar." The other thing he says, if you're going to use candles, make your own candles. That's the best way to do the mitzvahs, to make your own candles. Of course, mitzvah in the muvkar we know was olive oil, but it was hard to get olive oil in Germany in those days, right? Now, Baruch Hashem, we could have olive oil. And he brings from his grandfather, the Maral Prague, that the Maral held you could only use oil, that you cannot use. He didn't say it has to be olive oil, it could be any oil, obviously. But he said you could not use candles because he said a ner is specifically something with oil. But then the Chavos Yor, he questions his grandfather. He says, but we see that the Mechapes Yushalayim B'Neiros, that a candle is called a ner. So he's choilik on his Zayda, the Maral. But anyways, it shows that he learned the Sifrei Maral, right? He learned the Svarim of his Zayda Maral Prague. But the point that he's saying here is that if you are going to use candles, don't just go out and buy candles. He said, make your own candles, right? So that, again, it points to the same idea that if you're going to use oil, to go out and buy little cups already filled with oil. He's not saying you're not, of course you fulfill the mitzvah with bought candles also, but he's just saying there's a better geschmack to be involved in getting ready for the mitzvah. He didn't, he was a big Talmud Chacham, right? The Chavos Yor, and he didn't think it was Bittul Torah to make to go and make your own candles, right? It's not Bittul Torah, right? That's what's it? This. You saw that thing flying behind me. What was that? It didn't look like any kind of bug. It looked like some other type of thing. But that's the point that we're bringing out here. is that excuse me, is that when you do a mitzvah, you get involved. Like I know Satmar Rebbe in Monroe, he says if you anybody who's a geschmack for mitzvahs, it's not enough just to go bake matzahs, but he said you should go to the to the fields where they're growing wheat and go in not the vites, right? You harvest the wheat and you grind the wheat and you make the flour and you bake the matzahs to get involved with doing the mitzvah, you know. And the point is there is that you get involved with this, you get involved with the mitzvah. It's not you have to be excited with the mitzvah to the point where you get involved in the mitzvah. And so, I know I told Oilam I was going to make the Tish for 8 o'clock. At 8 o'clock, I finished. I sat by the menorah for about 45 minutes tonight. I didn't get to light until about it was about 6:36, and it was about 7:15 when I was done. And I cooked dinner, and it took a while. And I wanted to make a nice Suda for this big day, the Yartzeit of my holy Zeta. I've been looking forward to this day for such a long time, and especially with everything going on in the world. And so I cooked dinner, and finally I sit down 10 o'clock at night. In the middle, we had already washed, about 9:30. Sat down to wash, and by the time I was ready to sit and visit with all of our friends here and invite everyone into my home for the Yartzeit Suda, it was 10 o'clock already, right? But while I was getting ready, I was listening while I was cooking, listening to Rabbi Bart Sadok, koshertorah.com, right? And he's talking about what's going on in the world. And I'll tell you, he said, if you thought this year was difficult, he said that this year is going to be a walk in the park compared to next year. And he says it's going to be very difficult. But the truth is, I've talked about the Chavos year. It's his Yartzeit, right? He had a very difficult life. Things didn't go his way. He was sick as a small child. That's why he has the name Yair Chaim, right? His name was Chaim. They added the name Yair, right? And it's interesting. His name was. They gave him Yair, right? That he should be light. And his Yom Ha'Hulu was Hanukkah, the day of light, and he was so obsessed with Hanukkah, and he gave his neshama back to the B'nai Shalom on Hanukkah. And not only did he suffer in his personal life, he was a Rav in a few different towns. He was a Rav in Frankfurt. He was a Rav in Koblentz. Very briefly, right? And then his father was Rav in Worms, right? So then they said, he should go to Worms, right, and become the Rav. And then the town said, just because your father and your Zayda were Rav, he doesn't mean you're a Rav here, right? And so there was another Rav, and he didn't get along with him. And you can imagine the whole world is sending Shilas to Chavos Yor, right? And he's sitting in the shul, and he's basically like a balabas in the shul, right? Or he's just, one of the Koilingerman, right? And you have the Rav who the town hired, who was not as great as the guy who was sitting there davening in the shul that the whole world was sending Shilas and Chuvas to, And then what happened was a war between Germany and France, and Worms was destroyed. The whole town was destroyed, whole city. And he talks about this often, especially in the tshuva about Kvitlach. He talks about what happened in Worms, how the city was destroyed. And he says something very profound. He said some of the people in the town thought, Worms had all kinds of minhagim, right? Special minhage Worms. The town of Worms in Germany, they had their customs that were unique to their town, right? And among those were certain stringencies, kosher. They wouldn't eat certain foods that in other communities they would eat maybe without a hechsher, like butter and dried fruits and sauerkraut. They would eat, but most of the Jewish communities in Germany, other communities, they would eat these foods without a hechsher. And in Worms, the minhag was to be strict, that you only ate these if you got it from a reliable source you know is really kosher, right? A whole year, not just Pesach. Because a lot of places they wouldn't eat dried fruits on Pesach the whole year. They would. Now you get the dried fruits has OU on it. The sauerkraut has OU on it. We're not talking about that. In the old days, things didn't have hechsherim on it, so either gekauft when they eat or the nish, the vus, and that's the whole ma'isa, right? And not only that, but they had a lot of fast days in Worms, special fast days to commemorate old sufferings, pogroms, and things that went on. And they had fast days with slichus and everything in Worms. And the Chavos Yair says in the tshuva about Kvitlach, right? He said there's some people after the city was destroyed. They said, well, now it's not the same Worms anymore. Even if we're the same people and even we're going back to the same place, that Worms is dead. That Worms is gone, that town, and all the customs are gone. And now we start new. So we don't have to follow all these we don't have to have these extra fast days and these stringencies of kosher and so. So Chavos Yair said, no, they're wrong. He says, because and what was the idea is that when you're miyayish on something, right, when you give up hope, so then it's you lose it, right? If you have a lost item in Jewish law, and the item is lost, right, and then the owner gives up hope of ever finding it, so then whoever picks it up, it belongs to him. But if the person didn't give up hope, it's still his. As long as he didn't give up hope. And there are many things, famous stories in the Gemara and so forth about that. Right, the old woman, she said, I'm a daughter of Avram Avinu, who had so many servants, and there's a whole Torah from Reb Tzadok about that. And other tzaddikim talk about that. The Indian of not being miyayish. And of course, Rabbi Nachman was famous about not being miyayish, about not giving up hope. So the Chavos Yair talks about it in the tshuva. He says these people, they were claiming that the town is gone and we gave up hope, and even if we rebuild the town, it's a new town, it's not the old town. And the Chavos Yair says no. He said maybe individuals might have been miyayish, maybe individuals yichidim might have given up hope, but the community did not give up hope. And nobody has the right to say that the community gave up hope. And the community did not give up hope. And we still have the same Sifrei Torah and the Pinkas of Kehila and all these documents and all these Chodesh, all the holy objects from the synagogue. We were able to rescue them. And so therefore we were not miyayish. The Kehila stands and they rebuild, and it's still the old Worms. Even though, and then after that happened, that's when they took Chavos Yair to be the Rav in Worms. After all that happened, after the city was destroyed. And I think it's connected to this that we just read. But the point is that we're not miyayish, and the community cannot be miyayish. And again, it's connected to what we just said, that the main mitzvah, not just the main mitzvah of Hanukkah, but the main mitzvah is to stay by the lights and to rejoice in them. That's what all Judaism's about. You know, the Arizal added to our liturgy every morning before we daven, before we say Pesukah Zimra, 2 psalms, right? Psalm 30 and Psalm 67. So all Ashkenazim, everyone says Psalm 30. And the Sephardim and the Chassidim, we say Psalm 67. Although the difference is the Sephardim leave out the first verse of Psalm 30 all year except Hanukkah. Anyway, the point that I'm bringing up here is that the Chavos Yor says the mitzvah is to sit by the light and to rejoice with them. And if you want to learn Torah, obviously, again, we don't use the light of the menorah to learn. There's another light, but we look at the lights to learn Torah, or the minhag by most of Hasidim, and it comes from the Ariya Kodesh, is to say Tehillim and other things. But specifically, Shiras V'Sishbachos is a time. That's the other thing in that famous tshuva that he said his grandfather wanted to get rid of the minhag to allow people to play cards on Hanukkah. And he said, of all the times of the year to play cards, he said he wanted to say, don't play cards on Hanukkah, but pick another 8 days in the year. Those days you could play cards. And then they said, no, it's not going to work. They're going to wind up making it 16 days. So just keep it. And the rabbi cannot get rid of the minhagim of the town. It's the whole thing. And but the point is, and it's late, and I want to go to bed. I want to get up and daven tomorrow. I'm planning on taking a big trip tomorrow. But the point is, it's the whole year, right? Hanukkah night, we could read Mikra because there's no bad ruach. I guess that's the idea, because we see all the tzaddikim, they would say Tehillim, especially Yosher B'Seisr, and that seems to go back to the Ramban. But the Arizal and the Baal Shem Tov make a big deal that to say Psalm 91 7 times, we'll actually start with the Vinoyim, with the last verse of Psalm 90, and then Psalm 91, and do that 7 times by the Ner Hanukkah. It's a very famous segula for the whole year, to be protected and to be safe. We should all be protected and safe, especially this year. We need that koyach of the Ner Hanukkah and of Psalm 91, and we need that protection, and God should protect us. But yeah, there's a minhag: Psalm 91, Psalm 30, Psalm 67, Psalm 33, Psalm 121. Some also you do Psalm 133 on a koyach. So again, like we said, it seems like the earliest source of this saying, this Yosher B'Seisr 7 times, comes from the Ramban, from Nachmanides. It's a very old idea, but the Baal Shem Tov brings it in the name of the Ramban, and I think the Ariya Kodesh, but most of the Hasidim and the Sephardim and Chabad, they don't do it. But I'm saying the mainstream Hasidim, this is what we do, is that we say that Psalm 91 7 times, and it appears that it's sourced from the Ramban, from Nachmanides. So it's very old, we're going to the 1200s, So yeah, and you're right. The Sephardim also, we say this, the Chassidim, the Sephardim, we have this minhag to sit by the candles and say these psalms 7 times. And though that psalm we say 7 times, and the other psalms we also say. But it's to, like Chavos is to sit by them, to rejoice with them, to be near them and to rejoice with them. So, like I said, the Arizal added these 2 psalms in the morning every day before Pesukah Zimra, Psalm 30 and Psalm 67, which are psalms of Hanukkah. Psalm 30, of course, Mizmor Shir Chanukkah Sabayis LaDavid. It's the psalm of the of the dedication of the house, you have the word Hanukkah. And Psalm 67, we know, is the Tzurat Menorah, the Tzuras Menorah. It's the form of the menorah. Psalm 67. It's the shape of a menorah. And these two psalms we say every morning before davening. Why? Because that light of Hanukkah has to stay with us the whole year. In the darkest parts, in the winter time, we need the light of Hanukkah. We got to be near near Hanukkah and rejoice with them, and that's the Ikar mitzvah. It's not just the Ikar mitzvah near Hanukkah. And the word mitzvah not only means the commandment, but it means the connection. Meaning the main connection that we have to God is this story of Hanukkah, the lights of Hanukkah. That in the darkness we find the light, and we rejoice with them. And so that's the power of the Ner Hanukkah, is that we're rejoicing with the lights of the Hanukkah, meaning not just during Hanukkah, meaning we take this half hour a night, these 4 hours, right? Eight nights, we have a half hour each night. We sit by the candles and we absorb that, but that's something that we have to bring the whole year, and that's what it means, Ikar Mitzvah, and l'smayach them, to rejoice with them, because we're commemorating, like you said, that joy that was when the temple was rebuilt, when the menorah was lit in the Beis Hamikdash, the joy that we had. So our friend here, Ben, is asking about the importance of the 8th day of Hanukkah, of Zos Hanukkah. So again, I don't know really the sources for this, but it's something that's well known among the Hasidim. Basically, the way we say is like this, and it's already from the Kisvei Ari. Basically, the decree of how our year is going to be, right, is written on Rosh Hashanah, right? And then it's sealed on Yom Kippur, and then it's delivered on Hoshana Rabbah. But the envelope is not open until Zos Chanukah, until the 8th day of Chanukah. So, meaning, if there's some kind of a negative decree, it can still be intercepted during Hanukkah and up until including the last day of Hanukkah. And so it's brought, the Chavos Yor brings, and other tzaddikim bring, that, and it's brought in Minhagei Vermiza and so forth. And again, it's late, I have to go to bed. But it's brought that after we finish the mitzvah of the Hanukkah is to make a medura, to make a little, like a bonfire, and to burn the leftover wicks and the leftover oil from the menorah. And the concept that we have here in doing that is that it protects us. It's a segula. The Sfarim, the Kadeshim say that that's a segula to be protected from murder. So, which I think is important to be invested in this year, because we're finding ourselves in a very potential time of danger, but just because the potential doesn't mean that it's going to actualize. And so we have to pray, particularly during these days of Hanukkah, for miracles. It's an interesting thing. It's pretty well known that in benching, after benching, we say harachmans. They're not required, but we appeal to God's mercy. And so for Shabbos and Yontiv, harachman, yan chalenim shekol Shabbos amnuch l'chaylamim, we know, right? The harachmans. And so there's a harachman of harachman yasalon and nism nifleis And it's controversial. Should we say that? So generally what we say is you only say it if you forget Al Anisim, then you say the Racham, and then you could say Al Anisim. But the Chavos Yor says that no, you say this Harachman anyway. And even if you said Al Nisim, which you're supposed to do, you still say this Harachman. Even though the Sfarim say that it's a question because you're not supposed to ask for miracles. This year we need miracles. And it's a very similar process, like, and I know some of my friends said not to talk about politics. I'm going to try, but it's a mashal, right? On November, right? November 3rd, the first Tuesday in November, right? We vote, right? And then it goes to the Electoral College, and then the Electoral College, it goes to the Congress. It's the same thing, meaning until Congress accepts it, it doesn't really happen, right? So it's the same type of thing with Zos Hanukkah. Zos Hanukkah, like going back to Rosh Hashanah, it's a total culmination of what Rosh Hashanah is all about. Meaning that there's really a circle to the year that there's Shovavim, right? Shovavim leads into Tu B'Shvat is during Shovavim, and then leads to Purim, which leads to Pesach, which leads to Shavuos. And in a certain sense, Shavuos leads to the 3 weeks and the 9 days, and Tisha B'Av. And then Tisha B'Av, after Tisha B'Av is Tu B'Av, right? And that's like the second part of the year. From Tu B'Av, or some even say really from Chav Sivan, and that the 3 weeks are included in the second part of the year, and it's really Shavuos is when the first part of the year ends, and the Chav Sivan is when the new part of the year begins, but whatever it is. So in a certain sense, so let's say it's from Chav Sivan, so like all the avodah from Chav Sivan to 3 weeks, and then Tisha B'Av and Tu B'Av and Elul and Rosh Hashanah and some Gedalia and the Sarsi Mei Tshuva and Yom Kippur and the days leading to Sukkot and Sukkot itself and Shana Rabbah and Shvi Tzeres and Simchas Torah and Hanukkah, and it all culminates with this final day of Seis Hanukkah. That's when the whole avodah from that part of the year culminates, and then the next part of the year starts with Shovavim. And then Shovavim again takes us through the rest of the year, right? So, I hear Rabbi Bar Tzadok saying it's going to be a scary year. Doesn't have to be. We can pray for miracles that it's going to be a good year. And the thing is, even if maybe in the world things are tough, the Chavos Yor made it through his own personal illnesses and through his community's suffering with the destruction of his town, and after that he was able to rebuild and become the Rav, right? So we're praying that nothing bad should happen, and we're praying to be protected, and we're praying for peace, and we're praying that we should all just get along, right? But we got to get along in goodness and purity and holiness. And I'm not talking about even fights between Christians and Jews on theology and things. We have our real enemy, the secularists, who want to uproot everything, who want to destroy everything. And I'm really genuinely frightened if they get away with this, if the Democrats get away with stealing this election, and God forbid if they take the Senate, it's not so bad if they have the White House, but if they have the White House and the Senate, I'm scared to death they're gonna send us to concentration camps. But the truth is, even if we wind up in the concentration camp, our people made it through worse things. Because it's not about us as a people. It's not a nationalistic idea. It's not about Israel. It's about Yoshev b'Seiser Elyon b'Tzel Shakai Yisloinon. That he who sits in the shelter of the Most High, Yoshev b'Seiser Elyon b'Tzel Shakai Yisloinon, he's in the shadow of the Almighty. Is where he dwells. And I hope Matthew's right here. It's very possible that the president will serve 4 more years, and then what happens, right? Either way, it's going to be chaos. Meaning, if Biden, God forbid, wins, it's we're really looking at what's going on now in China. The Jews in Kaifeng have to hide. The Uyghurs, the Muslims, are other fellow monotheists. Even if we have, again, differences in opinions about this prophet and that prophet, this and that, there are fellow Abrahamic monotheists, our Muslim friends, our cousins, our brothers and sisters. They are being persecuted in concentration camps and treated like animals by the communists in China. And we have to call out this. We have to call out to protect these innocent people. Didn't do anything wrong. Don't deserve this punishment. And they're suffering a Holocaust in China. What's to stop this from happening here in America, especially against religious people? We see there's attacks from the left against religion. They're threatening to shut down our synagogues. They want to shut down churches. They want to, even now, there's a whole movement on Twitter, fighting against religion, and we can't let them get away with this. But the truth is, so then, even if President Trump wins, then what happens? Riots, the civil unrest. It's almost either way a losing battle. But the truth is that we can survive this. We could survive this. And the truth is, I love President Trump. I was worthy to see him in person the day before Election Day. I prayed over him. I prayed for him, and we pray for him every day. But we all know that he is only in the potter's hands, right? And we don't know. It's not Trump is going to get rid of the communists. We're praying God will get rid of the communists. God will get rid of all of these evil forces. But we hope and pray that President Trump will be a good shliach, will be a good agent of God's will. But the truth is, whatever happens is God's will. And even the bad things. But the other thing is, a lesson of prophecy, a lesson of the Bible is bad things do not have to happen. We know the story of Jonah, where he goes and he prophesies that the city is going to be overturned. It's going to be turned over. And they thought meant like Nineveh. Nineveh was going to be like Sodom and Gomorrah. It's going to be like Sodom and Gomorrah. Where that's what it meant by turned over, right? But they were turned over spiritually, and they had an awakening, and they repented, and they turned away from their evil deeds. They turned away from their evil ways, and from the theft that was in their hands. They repented of their sins. Now, I doubt that they changed their theology in Nineveh. I don't think they all of a sudden became monotheists. But they gave up, theft and murder, violence, and God forgave them. And that's how the city was turned over. It was turned over spiritually, not physically, not militarily, right? And so that's what we need. That's what America needs right now. We need to be turned over. We need to be turned back to God. We need to pray for miracles. And this time of Hanukkah, I remember when the election was taking place, a still small voice inside of me said there's going to be a miracle Hanukkah. And it's somewhere under the scenes. We don't know what. We don't know how, what, when, where. But I'm convinced that we still are going to have our Hanukkah miracle. Even before this January 21st, we could still have our Hanukkah miracle. But if we don't have the things the way we want them to be, if things don't go the way we hoped, right? We still have God. We still have the Torah. God is still in control, and God still has a plan, even if things are not going the way we want them to go. They're going the way God wants it to go. And so it's very difficult for us, and psychologically and emotionally and spiritually, it's a major, major uphill battle. I have to eat or drink something or else I can't bench because I didn't bench yet. So you have to excuse me. I should have another latke or another piece of chicken or something. But some chicken I made. But we kantaka, we bench during Hanukkah. We can daven harachman hiyas lanu nisim niflois. Please, merciful God, do miracles and wonders for us, just like you did for our ancestors in those days at this time, in this season. So all we can do is we can pray and hope for a brighter future. And so that's the message that the Chavos is bringing here on his Yartzeit. And again, I'll tell you something else. One of my favorite, and he brings this in Halacha, one of my favorite, most beautiful things the Chavos taught in the Makor Chaim. And I've mentioned this before, but it's worth mentioning again. The Halacha is, when you pray, when you recite Shemona Esrei, right, you have to face Jerusalem, right? But then the halacha is, what if you don't know which way is Jerusalem? You don't have a compass. You don't know where you're going, right? You turn your heart to heaven. You turn your heart to Jerusalem. In your heart, you face Jerusalem. You meditate upon Jerusalem. So Chavos has a kasha, because the halacha is, when you daven, you're physically supposed to face Jerusalem, right? But spiritually, mentally, you're supposed to face heaven. Your heart is supposed to be turned to heaven. So he says, Akasha, if you don't know which way is Jerusalem physically, how do you face Jerusalem in your heart if your heart's supposed to be facing heaven? And for the Chavos the Makor Chaim answers, Yushalayim Shomala, the heavenly Jerusalem. That's the place we have to enter. If we're going to survive whatever tribulations and hardships, doesn't mean spiritually necessarily that we're going to be physically transported to heavenly Jerusalem? Maybe yes. But the Baal Shem Tov says, wherever your thoughts are, that's where you are. And so our thoughts should be in Yerushalayim Shalmala. Our brain should be in the heavenly Jerusalem. Then we're in the heavenly Jerusalem. And then when we're in the heavenly Jerusalem, then God is in control. And we can hear that still small voice in our lives and know which way to run. And the real way to do that, to be in the heavenly Jerusalem, is to learn Torah, to keep halacha and learn Torah. And that is how we can be attuned spiritually, like properly calibrated, because we're going to need that to make it through this time, because there is a bright future ahead. But we have to learn how to be properly calibrated, and that's through Torah mitzvahs, and that's what we have to do. And so if we turn our hearts to the heavenly Jerusalem, we enter the heavenly Jerusalem. And so that's the way that we're going to make it through this difficult season. If there is whatever happens, it's going to be very difficult. Either way, it's going to be very difficult. But difficult doesn't mean bad. Because in the Alanisim, Panovich Rav says, right? In the Alanisim, we say, Alanisim, Alaniflois, Valchus, Valchamas, Valamelchamas, right? We thank God for the miracles and the wonders and the consolations and the salvations and for the wars. Why are we thanking God for the wars? The answer is the fight that we have to go through to succeed and to survive is something we have to thank God for. Because we can embrace this, that we are... Shlomo, you want more chicken?
No.
Or latke?
No.
So we could...
tried the chips.
Yeah, did you try it?
No.
Yeah, take one. So then if we embrace this, we enter the heavenly Jerusalem, and we embrace this message that to not give up hope.
Like an actual chicken.
Yeah.
Actual potato chip.
Yeah. So when we enter into the heavenly Jerusalem, and we don't give up hope, and we are able to sit by the light of Hanukkah and rejoice with them, and we keep that light with us through the darkest parts, that light will bring us joy. And that's why we're saying that's why we say these psalms every morning, to remind us of the light of Hanukkah that comes with us in the darkest part of the exile. What are you doing? Shlomo, what are you doing? So anyway, that's what we're going to embrace. Now, Ben was asking, how often do I go live? It's really on special occasions. So why did you pour all of that into that bottle? What purpose does that serve? No, don't pour it back. So like we had Thanksgiving, we have the Tish. Usually if I make a Tish, so this is a Chayelul, we had the Tish. I think I did a live stream for Chayelul. And so now go get a towel and pick up and clean up the mess you made on the floor. So now today's Yartzeit of Chavos, and that's why I made a live stream. But I don't do too many. I maybe should do more live streams because I'm trying to get more of the hours to go through. But all right, you're a good boy, Mr. Voily Ingle. So that's the point. Is that V'ala Milchamas, because it's spiritual too, right? I see myself. I was fighting And I'm sure I'm going to be tempted again and fall again. I was fighting with certain issues, and now it's gotten a little bit easier with some of those issues. But now I'm fighting with anger, and I'm having major problems with anger. And it's really damaging to my family and to me, and I feel bad about it. And that's part of life, right? As Vala Milchamas is that the wars that we fight are something we have to be thankful for. Meaning the Milchamas Yetzer, the fact that we're here and in our personal lives, the fight against the Yetzer Hara, that's something to be thankful for. But so too, I saw someone on TV the other day, I think it was today or yesterday, and he was saying, "What a great time to be alive!" You know, what a great time to be alive. That we're able to fight and to be, supporting and and supporting the president and supporting the Constitution against such great forces. It's like what our ancestors went through in World War II, right? In a small way. Maybe it'll be in a big way after this. Who knows? And maybe not. We hope not. But it's a great time to be alive because we have the opportunity to grow and to become great people. Because we always talk about those people as the greatest generation, right? The people who fought World War II, they're the greatest generation. We could strive for greatness also. So ESS asks, when will the entire nation of Israel awaken to Hashem's commandments? When will they begin to be the light of Hanukkah to the world? The truth is, it's only when Mashiach comes. Satmarov brings from the Rambam that the Simon Muvhuk, the Mashiach is here. The clear sign that the real Mashiach is here is that each and every one of us is transfigured and transformed. That our hearts are awakened to the truth. So it's going to take a supernatural miracle, to be honest, to really, first of all, to do tshuva, because the truth is, you talk about people who, don't follow our religion, right? Who are ethnically Jewish and not following our religion. I just talked about myself struggling with anger issues and with other character flaws. And so what? I have a beard and I have long payas and I wear a funny hat and a funny coat. Doesn't make me any better. Maybe it makes me more Jewish, right? But it doesn't make me any better. Being Jewish isn't the better thing. If what makes us better is our character. And the fascinating thing that the Noam Melech says in Parshas Vayeshev is that there are people who are not so religious, but they have good character. Those people, their good character is going to chase them, because it says in Psalm 23, and only goodness and kindness will chase me all the days of my life, and I'll sit in the house of the Lord forever. If all I have is good and kindness, and I'm not so religious, the goodness and kindness is going to chase me until I wind up sitting in the house of the Lord forever, meaning I'll become religious, right? And then you have the best of both worlds, right? And that's what we have to embrace. And so we have to work on is being good and kind. And of course, being religious. Of course, we have to keep Shabbos and kosher and Teres Mishpacha and put tefillin every day and all these things. And of course, it's good to go above and beyond the letter of the law, like we said, to be invested into mitzvahs. So you want to put on Rebbeinu Tam tefillin and this and that. You have a geschmack for mitzvahs, right? It's very late. I have to go to bed. I have a big day tomorrow, a long day tomorrow. But mein Shalom will helfen. Will helfen. We have to embrace that goodness and kindness, and us will also help us to be more religious. And so the truth is, there. Rabbi Salanter used to say, what he heard from the Chavos Chaim. When a Jew, let's say in Radin, speaks Lashon Hara, it makes the Jew in Paris from Mimachal Shabbos. And I think Belzer said when a bacher in Belz who had a custom of wearing knickers with long black socks, when he puts on long pants, I wear long pants during the week. But so I'm not saying you have to wear knickers with long socks. I'm just saying that was their minhag, right? And they changed it in the town, Some of the bacher, I mean, today you go to Belz in Yerushalayim, everybody has black socks all week long, right? But Belz said the same thing. The bacher puts on long pants and Belz is Gurim that the Yid in Paris Mechal Shabbos. So when will the people who are not so religious become more religious, you're going to ask? It's when we're more religious, and not just religious, but really sincere, really overcoming these character flaws, fixing them, working hard to make our lives better as a family and to work things out. Toward a brighter future. And so that bright future, again, that's the light of Hanukkah that comes in the darkest time of the year and brings illumination in its last Yantiv. It's a Yantiv, it's a major holiday. I don't like hearing people say Hanukkah is a minor holiday. No, Hanukkah is a major holiday. It's a rabbinical holiday, but it's a major holiday. Maybe it's a major holiday in a minor key, right? But really not even that. It's a major, major holiday. We say Hallel. You don't say Hallel on a minor holiday. These days of Hallel, these days of thanksgiving and prayer and praise should be able to take us through the whole year, and we should experience the simcha of this. It will take us through this dark time, through, Biden talking about a dark winter. Well, we can hope that we're not going to suffer through this, but if things get bad, and we hope and pray they won't, and we hope and pray for miracles and wonders, and we hope and pray that we should all be prosperous, we should all have health and parnasa, not just enough parnasa, but abundant parnasa, and not just we shouldn't be sick, but we should be healthy and strong. But the power. And so we should all have whatever we need. People who need shidduchim, they should get married. People who don't have children should have children. People who are sick should be healthy. And people who are poor should be rich. And people who are richer should be richer. Everybody should be rich. We could all be rich. God has enough. Liya kesef liyazav no Hashem. God has enough money. It can austeilen Sach Hanukkah geld. Teves soll austeilen für jeder eine Sach Hanukkah geld. Hanukkah geld of a ganz Jahr. The God, the Almighty should give out Hanukkah money, Hanukkah presents for everybody, for a whole year. We should be blessed with prosperity because God is able to do it. He wants to do it. Who's standing in the way? We're standing in the way. And that's the same thing with everything else. When are people going to start having peace? When are these warring factions going to make peace with one another? When we extend the peace. But peace on God's terms. Peace doesn't mean to give up who you are. Peace doesn't mean to give in. Peace doesn't mean to be a sellout. Peace means V'nesati shalom ba'aretz. In Deuteronomy it says, if you follow my statutes and walk in my commandments, I will give peace in the land. Hashem oiz lama yitein Hashem yivorech samay v'shalom. The Lord will give strength to his people. The Lord will bless his people with peace. And that means Torah. Hashem oiz lama yitein ein oiz ala Torah. God will give strength to his people, meaning God gives the Torah to his people, and God blesses his people with peace. Psalm 29, verse 11. That power of peace, we have to initiate it, and we initiate it through Torah and through living Torah, through learning Torah and living Torah. The spiritual power of Torah can fill all the darkness in the world, and we can be worthy to be happy, successful, productive members of society. And as a kenel or as banim, they banim oiskim b'terem mitzvahs l'shmal Yisrael shalom. And we should be zoichet to the true scholars kvod shemayim. It's just like the scholars of the or of the ner. We can have a scholars of the or malchus shemayim and the Bnei Shalom's laufen. The delight of the kingdom of heaven and will fill up the whole world. And we can all be worthy to serve, and so that's the answer. That's when is everyone going to be good? We got to be good ourselves first, and then. But God should bless us, like I said. That we should have it easy. We should be able to do all these things that we want to do, and God can bless us. As long as we do, what does it say in Pirkei Avos, right? If someone removes the Ol HaTorah, if someone removes the yoke of Torah, it's placed on him the yoke of worldly pursuits of this world. But someone who accepts the yoke of Torah is removed from him the worldly yoke. What is the meaning of that? It means that we have to be devoted to God and recognize what we're supposed to do and live a godly way. And then in that manner, we could be successful and be blessed and do what we're supposed to do, because that's what God wants from us, not just to that he wants us to be blessed. Why? So we can increase his light in the world, so we can increase his glory. Because if we're missing something, there's a lack of the manifestation of God's glory in this world. And so when we live up to the way that we're supposed to live up to, we can do things even greater. So God should bless us, and we should be able to do what we're supposed to do. All right, and like we said, we should be able to live up to what we want. So thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment, and we'll see you later. All right. Thank you very much. All right. Anybody have any questions or anything before we end? And you can contact me directly also. People know how to contact me. All right. Freilich and Hanukkah, good and Chodesh. We shall be zeichet and a Gemar Chasima Tova. We shall be zeichet to have all of our prayers answered. L'Tavl Chaim L'Shalom Amen. And we should be zeichet to see the coming of the real Mashiach very soon. All right. See you later.